Welcome to the Rising Lioness podcast on All About Animals Radio, a place dedicated to animals and all those who act to protect and advocate for them. Hi, I'm your host, Erica Salvamini, and I'm thrilled and honored to be here representing All About Animals Radio using my voice for the animals. Thank you for joining us for what intends to be a thought-provoking and soul-inspiring series where we discuss topics aimed at understanding the importance of the relationship between empathy, animal rights, and our peaceful coexistence with the animal kingdom. And now on to our show. Hi, today we welcome Devan Schowe, Campaigns Associate for the Wildlife Conservation and Animal Welfare Organization Born Free USA. Their mission is to fight against the exploitation of wild animals in captivity. Before achieving her master's in primate conservation in 2019 at Oxford Brookes University, Devan worked for several years as a primate caregiver and veterinary assistant at the Born Free USA Primate Sanctuary in South Texas. In her current role, Devan researches and writes reports on target issues, including the private trade of wild animals in captivity, effects of social media on wild animals, the fur trade, and trapping. Devan also increases public awareness on these issues by campaigning on various platforms, including social media, blog posts, and podcasts like The Rising Lioness. Hi, Devan, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. So tell us a little bit, how did you get started in animal advocacy work?
Yeah, so I've always been really passionate about animals, and I knew from a very young age I wanted to go into some line of work that would have me either directly or indirectly dealing with animals in some capacity. So at first I was thinking that would be a veterinarian, but after all of the chemistry and math courses that vets have to take for veterinary school, that quickly changed. And I started to get more into animal welfare and wildlife conservation work, and focusing more on animal needs in captivity and how that relates to their behaviors in the wild. So I got my undergraduate degree in animal behavior at a small liberal arts college. And right after that, I started working at the Born Free Primate Sanctuary in South Texas. And that was really my first exposure to seeing victims of the wildlife trade and the pet trade, and animals that had directly come from really traumatic experiences that needed a lot of attention and care to rehabilitating them, essentially to become monkeys again, because most of them had never been able to experience really living as a monkey should. So that was really interesting. And it got me thinking how I can, instead of treating the sort of symptoms of a larger problem, which is the primate pet trade, which is where we got a lot of our monkeys from, I really wanted to start to focus on looking at the source, the causes of why these monkeys end up at primate sanctuaries and why behaviorally they are struggling so much after growing up in that environment. So yeah, long story short, I went to grad school, did a degree in primate conservation, and then found myself back with Born Free USA in this position as a campaigns associate. And in this role, I'm able to pay more attention to the root causes of legislation, for example, that allows people to own wild animals like primates, and how that feeds into the wildlife trade, both legal and illegally, throughout the world. So it's been a little bit of a winding road, but it got me here and this position now that I really enjoy.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I can relate completely to, your love of animals and lifelong passion and having that lead you to your destiny. And it sounds like it's with Born Free USA and helping do, part of that good work that they do, which is really noble work. So I applaud you and everything that Born Free USA does. It's just really very much needed. And so thank you. And so to that point, so many questions came up with all that you said, but I'm going to stick to the line of questions that I have so that I don't confuse myself or you. I'll just ask you what exactly, well, not exactly, but if you could share a little bit about, as a campaign associate for Born Free USA, what are some of the things that you do for them?
Yeah, so my main job is to research and write reports on topics we want to increase public awareness on. So whether that is issues of the wildlife trade, as I brought up earlier, trapping, the fur trade, animals on social media and how that affects different things. So those are really the core issues that I've been focusing on, and researching and generating the data to put into reports that we can release to the general public and to lawmakers who are able to make changes in terms of legislation that relates to private animal ownership, or even the social media platforms, if we're able to communicate with them in some capacity and get them to change their policy guidelines of what they're allowing on social media. Things like that are the goals. Exactly. So that's really at the core of what I do.
So you're changing hearts and minds out in the public, and then also changing legislation, or at least supporting that change in legislation, and trying to get the people to realize, I guess, that they're constituents, they have a voice, that voice should be heard. And because if you're trying to change legislation, the people need to support that change as well. So I guess the two go hand in hand, which is all really important. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's gotta be, it's amazing work, but it's gotta be frustrating too, right? Because I feel like I'm doing that, we're all doing that, all of us animal advocacies out here are doing that. And you know, it feels like increasing the public awareness, it's just like you can never get enough of it. There's not enough to put out. Are there, what other ways are there? So you have all these amazing reports that you're putting together, and you're pushing them out through your website, I guess, and to the public. But what else can be done with them? Is there anything that regular people can do to help anybody listening, in terms of becoming more active from their home in their regular everyday life?
Yeah, for sure. So we always stress the importance of sharing our resources, because that's really the first step, is educating people and educating yourself on these issues and why they're problematic. Because the example comes again with social media, and that there's so much content out there featuring wild animals that doesn't necessarily seem, to the person who doesn't know a lot about either their species specific behaviors or what their environment is supposed to look like where they evolved, it doesn't necessarily look harmful or abusive or exploitative to the average person. So we really want these resources to, number one, educate people. So if we can help spread that as much as we can and get rid of that misinformation that is so prevalent on social media and on the internet in general, that would be an amazing first step. And then also more recently, we've really taken the angle of getting social media users themselves to have more of an active role in trying to regulate this content and flag it when it's problematic, because the platforms are a lot slower to respond to wanting to change their policies and wanting to monitor these things and take them down if we say that they're problematic, but they don't necessarily agree based on the guidelines they have in place now. So we've kind of put out more resources and campaigning tools more recently that put more power in the average person and the average user to just say, look, these are the things that you need to look for in terms of content that featured wild animals, and this is how you can know it's problematic, and these are the steps you can take to let the social media platform know about this problem.
That's great. I love that. I think that's a fabulous idea. I'm going to start, I say things, on there when I see stuff like that, that's, that animal's not supposed to be there. What are you doing? Or whatever, but that doesn't really do anything, I guess. It's more important to actually reach out to the platform itself and say, hey, this isn't right, and this is why, and I don't like it, and please do something about it. And if everybody starts to do that, I mean, I actually see like billboards out in the highway where, they have built, PSAs about put your phone down, don't be texting. Well, maybe there should be things about social media content out there too, because a lot of times people don't realize initially. When new things start, you're just like, oh, you're kind of mindlessly going through life, and oh, there's a cute, tiger in somebody's house and being pet, and how sweet, the baby's playing with the baby tiger. And it's like, no, wait, this isn't normal. This isn't supposed to be. And remind people and let them know, don't become numb to this stuff. It's not normal. Let's not normalize it.
Exactly. And people don't oftentimes realize how many animals are being harmed by extension. So you might just be watching one baby tiger in that video, but how many other baby tigers are going into that trade, and that cycle of abuse, just from the demand increasing, from more people seeing that kind of content and seeing, oh, look, tigers are harmful to play with. They're not dangerous at all. They're not threatened in the wild. These are all of the sort of false beliefs that people develop after seeing this content. And like you said, it becomes so normalized after seeing it so much that people don't realize there's thousands of animals being exploited for every one that you're looking at in a video that becomes viral.
Yeah, terrific. And then once they're not cute, kittens that you can actually touch and play before they start trying to maul you, what ends up happening to them then? Roadside zoos at the best. That's the best case scenario, which is a horrendous exploitative industry as well, or killed, or ground up for their bones for Chinese medicine or stuff like that. So yeah, I don't mean to get graphic, but people do need to understand, and that's kind of it's a lot. But yeah, we can all do something, and that's the good news, right? So we can all be advocates. We can use our voice, we can educate ourselves. And it starts with stuff like this, where we can have conversations, and we can drive people to your website and have them look at some of the reports. To that point, I wanted to ask, is there any legislation that Born Free USA is, I know that there is, that you've helped to make changes, for creating new legislation for helping animals. But
yes. Yeah, we've been involved in a number of initiatives over the years. So most recently, actually, last week, new legislation was introduced that prohibits the farming of mink for their fur, which fur farming has been something we've campaigned about for years and years. So the bill is called the Mink Virus Act, and it seeks to protect public health and human safety by implementing a 1-year phase-out period of all domestic mink farms. And it also implements a program to compensate those farmers as they transition out of the fur farming industry.
wow.
So that's really huge. And we're really hoping to get a lot of traction behind that bill. And we're urging everyone we can to reach out to their local Congress representative and just tell them to support that bill, because it would be really huge for the United States. Because as a country, we are very far behind in banning mink farming, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. In Europe, a number of countries have taken the initiative to ban it just as a response to public health. So it's really important that we get up to speed in terms of that. And then another one that was also pretty recent, it was back in December of 2022, the Big Cat Public Safety Act was passed, which was huge because it was amazing. So that bill basically banned the private ownership and public interaction with most big cat species. So Born Free alone, in addition to other organizations and individual citizens and champions on Capitol Hill, all together had been campaigning for that bill to be passed for 10 years. Yeah. So it was first introduced in 2012. So it was a long time coming and lots of work over the years. So it's just a huge win. And that was really incredible to see, and very exciting for us. And it'll help, curb horrible things like the cub petting industry and canned hunts, things like that. And then the other big one I just wanted to mention is the Captive Primate Safety Act, which was introduced in May of 2021. And so it hasn't really gotten very far. It's supposed to be reintroduced the next congressional session. So that bill will basically do the same thing as the Big Cat Public Safety Act, but with primate species. So it will ban the private ownership of primate species and the public interaction with them throughout the country.
That's amazing. Congratulations on the wins.
Yeah.
Big Cat Public Safety Act. Yeah, it was huge. It was tremendous. I was going to ask you about that. So thank you. I didn't know about the Mink Virus one. So when is that supposed to be, or was introduced already?
Yeah, it was just introduced last week.
Oh,
So yeah, so it's
okay.
very, very new.
Okay. Did you put out a post at all on that? Because I would absolutely love to help support that, and I'll take a look myself.
Yeah, we just did today, actually, just this
Okay.
morning.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, everything's new.
Okay. Wow. Well, good luck with that. Yeah, I'll help do my part and support that.
Great, thank you.
Of course, that's amazing. And my next question was going to be a little bit about the primate the Captive Primate Safety Act. So thank you for bringing that up. I know that because you started with primate as a primate caregiver for Born Free USA, it's probably your heart is probably in that a lot, even deeper and more so. Not that that takes precedence over all this other work, but I'm sure that's near and dear to your heart. And I know that you created, or at least you were in part a creator of the Finding Sanctuary documentary, the one called Life After the Primate Pet Trade. And I watched that recently, which was an amazing movie. I highly recommend anybody go and see that. It's only about, I think, 20 minutes long, and it's really important and really astonishing. Like, it really tells you and shows you what happens, which is exactly what you were just telling us about in the beginning of this podcast, how these animals, these poor monkeys, who many of them don't even make it out alive, right? Because they're going to do what monkeys do, which is pick fights and attack whoever they're hanging out with, which in this case are humans who have chosen to take these monkeys. They're supposed to be wild animals and make them their own companion pets. And they're making them do unnatural, abnormal things monkeys shouldn't be doing, wearing, they have leashes around their neck, they have clothes on, they're living life with these humans as though they're their children or companions. And so the few that do get rescued, it's not a fairy tale ending, is it? Is how the documentary describes it. And what you see is not a fairy tale ending, because they end up with OCD and they have to spend the rest of their life recovering in a sanctuary, which sounds really nice, but that's a living hell still, because some of them are self-harming and hurting themselves just because of the trauma that's been done. Same thing as that, humans, when we're traumatized, we have our own journey to recover and heal from. And these are animals, and they have their own, behavioral issues now that come as a result of what's been done to them. So I don't know, that must have been challenging for you to make that movie and, kind of go through all of that again, right?
Yeah, it's always challenging to see the damage, the irreversible damage that has been done to these monkeys from the time they were babies. It's always challenging to witness that, but I knew that the importance of making that documentary really outweighed that uncomfortable feeling I had throughout making it, because as a caregiver, like you do develop a sort of it's not like you ever become numb to it, because it never really loses its impact when you see them carry out these behaviors, the self-harm, like the really troubled ex-pets oftentimes will bite themselves or pluck their hair out, or you'll see them rocking or just pacing a lot. So it's always very troubling to see, but you also develop a sort of, okay, like, as sad as it is, this is kind of their normal, and we do everything we can to lessen the experience of those behaviors. So we'll give them things like enrichment, we'll try to vary their social opportunities as much as we can and vary their environment to keep it stimulating and lessen the boredom that they might experience where these behaviors would really increase. But yeah, for the most part, unfortunately, you just get used to seeing it as a caregiver and just trying to do the best you can for them. But it was actually also really kind of nice for me to go back there and see all of the monkeys I used to work with, because a part of me does really miss that direct animal interaction that I had as a caregiver. So it was almost like a reunion for me. And it was nice because, yeah, it was like one of my first big projects I had. Coincidentally, after I left working at the primate sanctuary, it was actually focused on the primate sanctuary and primates in general. So it kind of coincidentally worked out that it was like a very soft transition into this new position where I wasn't working with I was supposed to not be working with the monkeys at all, but I ended up going back and seeing them and getting the footage. And we had the opportunity to work with a wonderful filmmaker named Jack Wooten. He did a great job capturing everything. So it was definitely bittersweet, but I'm really glad that we were able to get that footage and put it out just to increase that awareness.
Yeah, I can see how that would be pretty fulfilling. So it was a beautiful, beautiful piece.
Thank you. Yeah, full circle moment for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And so I wanted to ask you next, the last time we spoke, you were telling me about an aquarium report that was being worked on, and you explained how fish are some of the most exploited animals in the world. And I think, if I remember correctly, is that your kitty?
Yes. I was going to warn you at the beginning, but recently she hasn't been very active. Yeah, you can hear her meowing.
Awesome. I have an orange cat floating around here too. So if you see a tail in the way. You had said, I think 80% or something like that of the fish don't even make it out alive during transportation. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct. There's pretty much during transport of the private trade, the mortality rate has been documented to exceed 80%. So any of that can range from just stress of transport or capture, injury, disease, or mistreatment. So it's a really high number. And unfortunately, most percentages of mortality have been not quite that high, but also very high for other species as well in the wildlife trade.
Wow. That's super upsetting. When you say, so this is an aquarium report, is that, and you say fish, what includes that? Are we talking about the big animals? They're actually mammals, whales and dolphins, or are we talking strictly about fish?
So for this report, we're actually talking only about fish, which still includes thousands of species. So of course we don't go in depth with that many species for this report, but we wanted to really focus on fish and not mammals, marine mammals, because we just feel like fish have been very neglected from the welfare discussion for a long time now. And we wanted to give them that spotlight and make sure that people are also aware of the struggle of fish, because I think the tendency for humans is to sort of overlook welfare issues with fish because they're so different from us. And, what their life looks like, their appearance is just so different from us that we are a lot of the time almost unable to empathize with them. Yeah. Or consider them to have a similar experience to us that would involve suffering. Right. But what the data is showing actually confirms that they are a lot more similar to us than we ever thought was possible before. And we really just want to shed light on that with this report and emphasize that as much as we campaign for removing species like elephants or giraffes or polar bears, like large, wide-ranging mammals from captivity, from zoos, we also want to make the same argument for fish species as well, because they have most of the same health issues and welfare issues as a lot of the larger animals that we focus more on.
That's incredible. I think that's really, really beautiful. I'm sure the fish really appreciate you finally giving them their day. And so are you saying that fish are sentient beings as well? As
for sure.
They feel and wow, that's incredible. And the report goes into that and talks about that? That's awesome.
Yes.
Is that out already, or is that almost not yet?
No, we will release it within the next few months. So yeah, definitely keep a lookout for that. But Yeah, we cover a lot of different topics from legislation regarding fish and captivity, which it turns out there is basically none of, other than just farming and aquaculture, things that protect fish from disease spread and completely depleting the populations that we eat a lot of. That's basically the only legislation in place to protect fish. From a welfare standpoint, there is none. So if you, for example, are a private exhibitor, like you have a zoo, and even if you own a lot of fish, you still are not required to get any type of license or have the fish registered in any way. You don't need to document the transfer of these animals, the breeding. There's no requirements for like minimum tank sizes, none of that.
Right. So it's completely 100% unregulated.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Like most of the animal industries that exist. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. It's gotta keep working at it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you about some other like wild animals in captivity stuff that you're working on, but I happened to notice you had a new report. I think it was a new report called Thrill Killing on your site. Or
yes.
Yeah, that's upsetting. I mean, it makes me shudder, but I'm glad that you have that up and that you did a report on this. Can you share a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, definitely. So this report summarizes what we're referring to as thrill killing, which is essentially just killing mass numbers of animals, some of them that are protected species that are threatened with extinction in the wild. And we document the way that these animals are killed en masse throughout the country, because in 42 United States, these types of competitions are completely legal. So it's anything from a rattlesnake roundup, where people are encouraged to find as many rattlesnakes as they can, where they're killed basically in a pit at a venue, to bobcat killing contests, where people are encouraged to get the biggest bobcat they can find. A lot of these contests don't have any kinds of limits. So it's just incredibly damaging and doesn't do anything for conservation whatsoever, especially in terms of the wild pigs that are in Texas. The argument has been made that the killing competitions help.
This has been Erica Salvamini for the Rising Lioness podcast on All About Animals Radio. A special thank you to Chris Corley for generously lending us his song, Zero Gravity, for the Rising Lioness podcast theme. Please take a moment to write a review for our show, as it helps others to find us. Please also support our guests and their work, All About Animals Radio, and our social networks. Doing this further supports the animals and their advocates too, thereby making you an Animal Kingdom warrior also. You can find our links on the Rising Lioness podcast page. Until next time, in the words of Sharon Nunez, Animal Equality President, remember this: the small actions of one passionate individual can create a butterfly effect, leading to a movement that has the power to change the world. Please use your voice for the animals today.